Hello and welcome to another episode of Inside the Inferno. Alongside Jack Bartlett, I'm Ari Wall. Thanks so much for joining us. Jack, a lot to talk about this week. We got some football, some basketball, volleyball. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ari. A jam-packed show, so let's get right into it. Let's rewind to last weekend where the Sun Devils took their first loss of the Kenny Dillingham era against Oklahoma State. Our Carly Koskovich has more.
The Arizona State Sun Devils hosted the Oklahoma State Cowboys 1 year after losing to them on Oklahoma State turf. However, this year, home field advantage didn't seem to play much of a role. The game was played here at Mountain America Stadium, and Arizona State still fell to Oklahoma State 27-15.
End of the day, we got to be more consistent in the second half. You know, we didn't put together a drive.
Freshman quarterback Jaden Rashada led the offense alongside running back Cam Scadaboo. And being Rashada's second ever NCAA career start, he threw for 167 yards and a touchdown.
Offense could have had the defenses back more, but that's why we're here. You know, we learn.
Coach Dillingham has embedded a new culture for the future of this program, and losses are just part of the growth needed to succeed moving forward.
Nobody cares about your circumstance, so, you know, we just got to go back to work, play the guys that are going to play, and put together the best plan going into next week around them.
Coach Dillingham's influence has clearly already impacted who his players are.
Gather your teammates around, and, you know, you learn more from losses than you do wins, so.
The Sun Devils will play Fresno State next Saturday, September 16th at Mountain America Stadium. In Tempe, Carly Koskovich, Inferno Intel.
Well, from Oklahoma State to Fresno State, the Sun Devils will look to improve to 2-1 when they host the Fresno State Bulldogs on Saturday night. Here with a preview is football reporter Stephen Buxton.
Coming off last week's loss to Oklahoma State, Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils are prepared to rebound against Fresno State in Tempe. This is the first matchup for the two teams since ASU lost to the Bulldogs 20-31 in the 2018 Las Vegas Bowl. The 2-0 Bulldogs come to town 3-point favorites over the Sun Devils after an upset against Purdue and most recently a 34-31 win against Eastern Washington in Fresno. Leading the Bulldogs on offense is Chandler High School graduate Mikey Keene. The redshirt sophomore led Chandler to 2 state championships in the Open Division, but was not offered by Arizona State. Instead, Keene went out east to play with UCF for his first 2 years, before transferring to Fresno State this past offseason. The key matchup will be Arizona State's defense versus Keene and the Bulldogs' offense. ASU's pass defense is by far the best unit Fresno State will have faced. The Sun Devils have allowed just 165 yards per game, good for second in the Pac-12. Dillingham and the rest of the team have to lean on that secondary to slow down the Fresno State offense that has put up just under 300 passing yards per game, leading to an average of over 30 points this season. On offense, there are a lot of questions for the Sun Devils. Injuries leave the Sun Devils without multiple starters on the offensive line, which led to Rashada getting sacked 3 times last week. The real question, though, is will they stick with the freshman quarterback? Notre Dame transfer Drew Pine is coming back after a hamstring injury he sustained during camp, and Dillingham said he should be ready to go this week. Even if he's not 100% this week, with USC coming to town for the following game, will ASU pivot to an experienced veteran if Rashada struggles again? We'll have to see what unfolds on Saturday at 7:30 here in Tempe. Reporting for Inferno Intel, I'm Stephen Buxton.
Thanks, Stephen. ASU men's basketball schedule is finally starting to take shape after the Pac-12 announced weekly pairings for each school yesterday. Inferno Intel reporter Paisley Poole joins us to go deeper. Thanks for being here, Paisley.
Hey Jack, happy to be here. And yes, with the Pac-12's recent pairings, we are able to make some analysis on the season and start the conversation. Not to mention the Final Four coming to Arizona.
ASU plays in several non-conference tournaments and series to start the season. From Mississippi State and the Barstool Invitational at the beginning of the year to the Vegas Showdown and the Jerry Colangelo series against Northwestern, which game stands out to you the most?
Right, Jack. The first non-conference series to start the season will be the Barstool Invitational in Chicago. The Mississippi State Bulldogs did indeed qualify for the tournament in 2023 and were one of the last 4 teams in, with ASU, then with Northwestern as second in the Big Ten, and star guard Boo Buie recovering from hand surgery. That Northwestern game will be an exciting one, but Mississippi's physically challenging play style under Coach Chris Jans will most likely be entertaining.
Definitely some tough competition, but looking at conference play, it doesn't get any easier. What do you make of the 3-game stretch against USC, UCLA, and Arizona to end the season?
Well, the Sun Devils are going to have to put up a fight and be ready for some basketball. Remember, last season's Pac-12 standings finished with UCLA in first, Arizona at second, and USC at third, and ASU not too far behind at 5th place. We can't just rely on numbers, though, because we've seen some pretty spectacular basketball from ASU. In case you forgot, the half-court buzzer beater last year by Des Cambridge Jr. against Arizona. We also don't know exactly what to expect from the roster turnover across the conference, with UCLA losing 4 of their 5 starters and welcoming a Utah transfer and 4 international additions.
The Sun Devils were able to make the round of 64 in March Madness last season. Looking at the schedule, how do you expect ASU to finish this year? Could we see back-to-back trips to March?
You know, Jack, you never know what could happen. Who's going to get injured, who's going to show out. So as of now, Sun Devil men's basketball has a decently challenging schedule, but a fair chance, especially with how far they made it last year. That may be enough to lock them in for success in the coming season.
Well, thank you, Paisley. We're just under 2 months until college hoops are back when ASU takes on Mississippi State and the Barstool Invitational on November 8th. Thanks, Paisley. Transitioning over to volleyball, last season ASU volleyball finished with a 13-19 record. Under a new coaching staff, and the Sun Devils are 10-0 in 2023. And their win over Memphis on Thursday made them the first team in Division I to 10 wins this season. Here's Aaron Herpy with more.
Thanks, Jack. ASU volleyball is starting off their season strong after a roller coaster 2022 season. New head coach JJ Van Niel seems to be pushing the program into the right direction. The Sun Devils have swept 7 of their last 10 opponents while averaging 13.8 kills per set and hitting .334. Returners Marta Levinska and Jelly Sear are carrying the Sun Devil offense with 123 kills and 120 kills so far this season. The team is in their final weekend of non-conference play before kicking off their season next week versus the University of Arizona on Thursday, September 21st in Mullet Arena. It is also the 50th anniversary celebration of Sun Devil volleyball, as well as the first official volleyball match held in Mullet Arena. While the Sun Devils had a successful season so far, all eyes will be on JJ Van Niel as his first home game will be a sold-out rivalry match with alumni in the building. Back to you guys at the desk.
Well, thanks for that, Aaron. We'll definitely be looking forward to that game in Mullet Arena this coming Thursday. We're now joined live by one of our women's hockey reporters, Chase Clemens, who is inside the Mountain America Community Iceplex, where the ASU women's hockey team is currently practicing. So, Chase, last weekend, 2 preseason scrimmages against the Arizona Cachinas, where the Sun Devils dominated. What can you tell us about those games?
Yeah, Ari, so the Sun Devils won both games 5-0 and 3-1, outshooting the Cachinas 105-11. Even though it was against inferior competition, there were 2 major improvements that were noticeable from last season's team. The first one being speed. This was an area Coach Ellis wanted to improve. They focused on it in their off-season strength training, with recruiting, and with how they practice. They're skating and practicing much more up-tempo. And the second improvement is depth. A few years ago, ASU struggled to field 4 complete lines. This year, Coach Ellis believes it's the first time in program history that she has a full 21-person roster of players who can compete.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the speed being a big point of emphasis going into this year, so it's great to see that that is already playing a big factor. And with those games being scrimmages, the freshmen and the newcomers really got to showcase their skills and shine. Just how impressive and important were their contributions?
Great question, Ari. The newcomers were the story of the weekend. They scored 5 of the team's 8 goals. Paige Ring had 1 goal, Breon Powell had 2 goals, Anita Fleming and Mia Jarvis each had a goal to their name. And Mia Jarvis also won the team's Hard Hat Award after Game 1, which is given to the hardest working player. And defenseman Sophie Fossil looked great and comfortable in her own zone, despite it being her first game in maroon and gold. And goalie Brooke Kimmel didn't look too shabby between the pipes either. She gave up only 1 goal in 2 periods of play, and that was in the final minute of Sunday's exhibition game.
Yeah, certainly some encouraging signs from the newcomers. And let's pivot from the newcomers over to the returners. And I see there behind you, practice is starting to finish up. So a couple questions. First question, Jill Ketchum, still recovering from the ACL injury. Was she practicing today? And then secondly, when you look at some of the returners like Ketchum, who are you looking forward to having a big year?
Yeah, Ari, Jill Ketchum is on the ice this morning, but in sweats. She's not a full go for practice as of yet. She's expected to return in the coming days. For those that don't know, Ketchum's been out since last December due to an ACL injury, so she's doubtful for Maryville, but she should be back for the Utah series in early October. But for players that fans will see on the ice, I'm looking forward to Sam Murphy and Sydney Paulson this season. Paulson had 2 goals in the series against the Kachinas, and Murphy had a pair of assists as well. I expect more scoring like that this season.
Well, Chase, thanks so much for the insight and joining us here on the show. We'll talk to you soon. Over to soccer now. Last weekend, ASU women's soccer was handed its first loss of the season against Texas Tech down in Tucson, and our Douglas Santo has more from the 2-game road trip and what's to come for Sun Devil soccer.
Thanks, Ari. The ASU women's soccer team is coming off a 1-1 weekend against Utah State and Texas Tech. On Thursday, September 7th, they defeated Utah State 1-0 behind a goal in the 37th minute from graduate student forward Florence Valancourt, her first of the season. This win brought ASU's regular season non-conference unbeaten streak to 16 straight games, dating back to 2021. Freshman forward Ashley Leonhardt assisted Valancourt's goal with a shot of her own that rebounded off the post to Valancourt for the finish. 1 goal was good enough to win it for the Lady Devils, as sophomore goalkeeper Pauline Nels recorded her 5th clean sheet of the season with 4 saves. Then on Sunday, September 10th, ASU took on undefeated Texas Tech, where they would suffer their first loss of the season, 1-0. The Lady Devils were outshot 12-5 and 6-2 in shots on goal. ASU kept the Red Raiders off the board for most of the game, but in the 73rd minute, Texas Tech's graduate student defender, Hannah Anderson, scored the go-ahead and eventual game-winning goal. Despite the loss, ASU is 4-1-3 heading into their final non-conference game, with the lone loss being to a talented Texas Tech team. The Lady Devils will conclude their non-conference schedule Friday, September 15th at home versus Colorado College at 7 p.m. Arizona time.
Well, thanks so much for that, Douglas. And that will conclude this week's episode of Inside the Inferno. Jack, always a pleasure to share the desk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a treat to share the desk with you as well, Ari.
Make sure to stay up to date with all of Inferno's content by following us on Instagram and on Twitter at Inferno Intel, and also check out our website at infernointelmedia.com.
As you said, Ari, this concludes another episode. Thank you so much for tuning into Inside the Inferno. From our producers, reporters, Ari Wool, and myself, we say until next time.